My Lords, I commend my noble friend for bringing this bill on such an important issue, and I had hoped that we would restrict our debate to empirical evidence on the merits of this modest bill rather than smears about right-wing dark money and conspiracies. I will restrict my remarks to a few reflections on relevant studies on both sides of the debate and highlight the need for objectivity in this area of a kind that could be provided by a suitably comprised committee.
Why do noble lords who are proposing and supporting this bill assume that the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynaecologists are not themselves capable of researching in the way that you're describing? Why are we here again attacking institutions that have expertise and that do this constantly? It's like the attack on the Supreme Court. It's basically expressing contempt for the institutions that currently exist, doing precisely what you want, because you want to set up committees, I suggest, which are going to be weighted with people that you are going to choose to be on it.
Well, I think that's a fatuous conspiracy theory again, but I would put back to the noble lady, if she satisfactorily answers my question about the involvement of Mary Stopes International and BPAS in the RCOG, then I will gladly debate her on the issues that she raises. If I can continue, my lords.
I really must ask that I'm not actually addressing. I'm not addressing the noble lord. I am not addressing the noble lord. I am speaking to my colleagues on his front bench. I am very sorry, but shouting you and pointing is not the conduct that we expect in this House, and it is in our guidance that those things. And as I ask the noble lord, the government whip, to please remonstrate with his colleague not to behave like that.
I would say to the noble lords that the noble lady, the Baroness Kennedy of the Shores, had ample opportunity to make her points, and she intervened on me, and I put a very reasonable question back to her. And if I can continue. My noble lords may be aware of a fascinating peer-reviewed academic study published in 2010 of twins in the womb at 14 weeks gestation. The study found that the twins' self-directed hand movements were more calibrated than movements to the uterine wall, while movements towards the co-twin exhibited even greater care. The study determined that such deliberate actions could not simply be the result of spontaneous reflexes, and the team behind the study concluded that these findings force us to predate the emergence of social behaviour. Another study, published by a team of child psychologists and neuroscientists in 2006, found that, quote, surprisingly advanced motor planning in fetuses at 22 weeks gestation, again pointing towards the sentience of the fetus during the second trimester of pregnancy. These are precisely the kinds of studies that ought to be informing government policy, and yet neither were cited in the RCOG reports on fetal sentience, to which my noble friend alluded earlier. Some will no doubt argue that a committee is not required when we have the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynaecologists to guide us. But on the contrary, I would suggest that RCOG reports on fetal sentience highlight the need for objectivity in this area, and that there are a number of good reasons to be cautious about accepting their conclusions, because the RCOG itself has now distanced itself from some of the conclusions in its 2010 report. For example, its updated 2022 report no longer asserts, as the earlier one did, that, quote, a fetus is in a continuous sleep-like unconsciousness or sedation. The 2022 report also removed a section on responding to common questions that included answering the question, will the baby feel or suffer pain? With no, the fetus does not experience pain, but they're seemingly no longer sure. Since the RCOG has itself rejected sections of its own report, it would seem wise not to assume its 2022 update is wholly reliable either. In a letter published in the European Journal of Pain, Italian neonatologist and bioethicist Carlo Bellini, who has written extensively on fetal pain, has questioned the conclusions of the 2022 report, arguing they were based on misrepresentations and incorrect extrapolations of research cited in their support. As a layman, of course, it is difficult for me to comment objectively on differing research, but what is clear, however, is that government policy would be assisted by a committee that is able to provide objectivity in this debate and consider all relevant findings. In fact, this is something that ought to be supported by the RCOG. Let me finish with a final reflection on why this matters beyond simply informing the abortion debate. A 2007 academic journal cited in Neurodevelopmental Changes in Fetal Pain asserted that, quote, exposure of the fetus and premature newborn to pain has been associated with long-term alterations in pain response thresholds, as well as changes in behavioural responses related to the painful stimuli. In other words, if a baby experiences pain before birth, it may impact its development and behaviour in later life. It is therefore imperative that we understand fetal sentience adequately, so any treatment of unborn babies is performed in a way that will not lead to long-term damage. I therefore, my Lords, strongly support my noble friend's bill.